Chapter 12 is small and maybe deceptively simple. I'm not sure what the term is for it, but maybe when you're watching a movie and the character turns on a TV and the movie shows you what they're seeing and they are flipping channels. Or they maybe the character is walking through Times Square and people are yelling things on the street, and then the wind blows a newspaper and it catches the character's foot and he or she picks it up and looks at it. I don't know what the name for that device is, but it's a cacophony of voices, maybe just getting the audience in tune with what the character is going through. This is classic in the Grapes of Wrath. Steinbeck will stop the narrative and it's almost like different voices shouting, and Steinbeck is merely the journalist, the stenographer, just taking down quotes of what people are saying. That's not exactly what Chapter 12 here is, but I think Steinbeck is embodying the foolish voices He's embodying the foolish voices of his day by embodying the foolish voices of 1900. And so foolish nostalgia is wrong-headed and foolish optimism are wrong-headed, and both a false looking to the past and a false looking to the future really muddy the truth of what's going on now. So a false remembering, a false hope, and a false now are endemic to the life east of Eden. So the first couple paragraphs, he focuses on a foolish, false nostalgia. You can see how this book has reached a great boundary that was called 1900. Another 100 years were ground up and churned, and what had happened was all muddied by the way folks wanted it to be. More rich and meaningful the farther back it was. In the books of some memories, it was the best time that ever sloshed over the world, the old time, the gay time, sweet and simple, as though time were young and fearless. So Steinbeck accuses us of having muddy glasses and overly optimistic view of how things used to be in light of how awful things are now. Old men who didn't know whether they were going to stagger over the boundary of the century looked forward to it with distaste, for the world was changing, and sweetness was gone, and virtue too. Worry had crept on a corroding world, and what was lost? Good manners, ease, and beauty. Ladies were not ladies anymore, and you couldn't trust a gentleman's word. Well, we can see because we are a couple generations after Steinbeck's writing this, Steinbeck writing about the couple generations before him, that this is just a perennial comment that an older generation makes about the world. Things didn't used to be this bad, and now things are much worse. There was a time, foolish, nostalgic people might say, when people kept their fly button fastened. In other words, people are more promiscuous. Sexually, people were more pure back then. And man's freedom was boiling off. And even childhood was no good anymore. Not the way it was. No worry then, but how to find a good stone, not round exactly, but flattened and water-shaped, to use in a sling pouch cut from a discarded shoe. Where did all the good stones go? In all simplicity. So a foolish nostalgia ignores the fact that in a good, innocent childhood, that parents or guardians or older siblings will shield you from adult responsibilities, and that there's a time of innocence and joy, and then you grow up, and that you grow up. And so our nostalgia for earlier times is not because those times were better, I think Steinbeck is saying. It's because we simply weren't aware of the life east of Eden because someone was shielding it from us. And now that we're older, we think older times are better when in fact they weren't, is I think what Steinbeck's point is. Third paragraph of the chapter, a man's mind vagued up a little, for how can you remember the feel of pleasure or pain or choking emotion? You can remember only that you had them. An elder man might truly recall through water, so an elderly man isn't seeing clearly, he's seeing like you see when you're underwater. You can make out shapes and distorted images underwater, but you don't remember things exactly as they were. This older man through water the delicate doctor testing of little girls. I'm not sure what that means, but in the previous chapter, I believe it's chapter 8, on Kathy Ames, he talks about an innocent sexuality that all kids have. Hopefully that's what he means here, that you're interested in boys or girls when you're younger, and an old man will over-idealize that innocent kind of... I hope that's what Steinbeck is referring here to. But such a man forgets, and wants to, the acid emotion eating at the spleen, so that a boy had to put his face flat down in the young wild oats and drum his fist against the ground and sob, "Christ, Christ," such a man might say, and did. "What's that damn kid lying out there in the grass for? He'll catch a cold." So I think what Steinbeck is getting at here is the inability for generations to communicate with one another. When you're young, you actually feel things, and when you're older, you forget that you feel things, or you misinterpret how you think of your young self as your old self thinks about you. So you have this distorted, as he said, watery memory of your past, and things are very real and immediate to a young person, and they're just words to an old person. And so you focus on shallow, practical things as an old person, and you say, that young man having a crisis, an existential crisis out in the grass, pounding the grass, you say, he's going to catch a cold. So old people look at the shallow, external thing that's going on, and young people feel the thing that's going on. And what do old people say? Oh, strawberries don't taste as they used to, and thighs of women have lost their clutch. Again, I don't know what that metaphor means, but I think that means sexually women aren't young anymore. Well, that's because you're old and you're probably not having relations with young women anymore, and that's why the thighs don't seem to be what they used to be as far as strength. And probably, I'm guessing, strawberries have always tasted like strawberries. And some men ease themselves like setting hens into the nest of death. You think about how a hen doesn't just plop down, but goes back and forth. And so Steinbeck is comparing our last decades on Earth, our last years on Earth, is just setting into the nest of death. History was secreted in the glands of 1 million historians. We must get out of this banged-up century, some said, out of this cheating, murderous century of riot and secret death, of scrabbling for public lands and damn well getting them by any means at all. This has to be ironic. I believe East of Eden was written in 1952, or whenever the exact year it was written. Steinbeck has seen both world wars, so this has to be an ironic statement that there's something damned about the 1800s and something hopeful and beautiful about the 1900s. He's seen the Nazis already. He's seen Joseph Stalin, and so Steinbeck has to be doing a wink-wink here that the 1800s are the banged-up century. Next paragraph. Think back. Recall our little nation, fringing the oceans, torn with complexity, too big for its britches. Just got going when the British took us on again. We beat them, but it didn't do us much good. What we had was a burned White House and 10,000 widows on the public pension list. So Steinbeck looks at the history of war, even in young America. Then the soldiers went to Mexico, and it was kind of a painful picnic. Nobody knows why you go to a picnic to be uncomfortable when it is so easy and pleasant to eat at home. I'm assuming what Steinbeck means by that is there was no good reason to have war in Mexico with the Mexicans, yet we did. The Mexican War did two good things, though. We got a lot of Western land, damn near doubled our size, and besides that, it was a training ground for generals, so that when the sad self-murder settled on us, the leaders knew the techniques for making it properly horrible. So the Mexican War was good, and I think, again, he's speaking wryly, ironically, tongue-in-cheekly, wink-wink. He said the war was good for two things. The expansion of the United States, the Western territories, greatly expanded American colonialism, and then secondly, it trained people to be generals in the Civil War. Well, what happened in the Civil War? He calls it a self-suicide. What a brilliant way to describe a civil war. And you know what else was a civil war? East of Eden, Cain and Abel. They were brothers and they fought against each other. Also, in the Cain and Abel story of Genesis 4, a self-suicide. And then the arguments. Can you keep a slave? Well, if you bought him in good faith, why not? Next, they'll be saying a man can't have a horse. Who is it wants to take my property? And there we were, like a man scratching at his own face and bleeding into his own beard. Again, I do not believe for 1 second that Steinbeck is saying that he is pro-slavery in any stretch. I think he's speaking the language of his day and putting it in a negative connotation, because what is saying that a person can own another thing? It's like someone scratching at his own face and making it bleed. In other words, it's another kind of self-sabotage. It's a warring against our own self. Well, that was over, and we got slowly up off the bloody ground and started westward. There came boom and bust, bankruptcy, depression. That's really life east of Eden. There's good times, there's bad times, there's depression, there's bankruptcy. Great public thieves came along and picked the pockets of everyone who had a pocket. East of Eden, there's no adults in the world making sure everything's okay. You can believe that when you're a child, but then you grow up and you realize there's no adults out there taking care of us. People are corrupted by their power. To hell with that rotten century. Again, irony. The next century is not going to be any better. Perhaps worse than the 1800s. Let's get it over and the door closed shut on it. Let's close it like a book and go on reading. New chapter, new life. Still, even in 2025, people will post new year, new me, as if the calendar changing is going to solve the evil in the world, the evil inside of us, the brokenness of everything. And Steinbeck is saying, East of Eden, you can flip that calendar all you want, and a new century, a new year, a new month, a new day, January 1st doesn't change anything. As U2 says, nothing changes on New Year's Day. A man will have clean hands once we get the lid slammed shut on the stinking century. Remember, Charles can't clean his hands. He can't clean the kitchen. He can't get the damn spot of sin, of evil, of brother against brother to the death. He can't clean that. It's a fair thing ahead. There's no rot on this clean new 100 years. It's not stacked, and any bastard who deals seconds from this new deck of years, why, will crucify him head down over a privy. Oh, but strawberries will never taste so good again, and the thighs of women lost their clutch. So really, I think what Steinbeck's doing in chapter 12 is ironical. It's heavily ironic. The foolish remembering of the past and the foolish optimism to the future both distort the present day. The present day is no better, no worse than the past, and no better and no worse than the future. And so it's foolish to put our hopes in just that a calendar is going to change something and the future will magically be different, just as it is foolish to remember our childhood and think that it was somehow superior than our present. So remember the past. I think Steinbeck would have us go back to chapter 1, the first book, chapter 1, as we read the first chapter of the second book, chapter 12. And remember that remembering is a good thing, but the remembering has to be a true history.